Okay, Pam, I think we'll go ahead and start.
Sounds good. I'm going to ask everybody to mute except for Bonnie and Alan, and I will mute myself also.
And so if anybody has any questions, if you'll so kindly just put those in the chat, we'll be watching for those and pass those questions on to Alan as we progress through the hour. So welcome everybody. Welcome Alan, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us on We Talk Art this evening. And I'm kind of excited that this is a Wednesday night and not the middle of the day sometime. So anyway, away we go. So
Thanks, Bonnie, for being kind to me and allowing this time slot. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And I've promised Alan I'm not going to go into his deep dark past and ask him any embarrassing questions or anything like that. So we're going to go right to it. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us. And
My pleasure. And I just, even as you said that, Bonnie, I think like now everybody wants to know what's Alan's deep dark past and all these secrets, right?
yeah, that's going to be
It's
that'll
like,
be our next series. What were
bum,
we going
bum, bum.
to oh the dark side of art or something. But anyway,
Ooh, yes. I want to watch that one.
yeah, well, Pam, we got to work on that. Um, so Alan, let's go back and let's go back in time. And when did you get interested and decide that art was maybe your calling for a life's work?
Wow, that's a really good question. I didn't always imagine myself as an artist. I didn't have that prescient awareness. I did like art and enjoyed it very much, but I wanted to be a left-handed pitcher in the major leagues. As a boy, you know, that was my little boyhood dream. And it wasn't until sophomore year in college that the scales fell from my eyes and I realized that I was not draft material, Bonnie. I wasn't going to make it to the big ones. And all of a sudden, it's interesting when one dream falls away, you start to look at your life differently and you start to see another narrative or another story that's been there. And I started to think of all the wonderful art teachers I had. They were always tremendously affirming. And I was in a drawing class as an elective in college, and the drawing teacher then was encouraging me. And so I thought, well, why don't I declare a major in art? But I really didn't know what that would mean. I didn't have a model for that. No one in my life was a working artist. So I ended up transferring to the state university that had a good art department and a Division III baseball team that wanted me to play with them. So I went there and waltzed into the chairman of the art department's office with my high school and college drawing / painting portfolio, put it all out before him and said, what do I do? I don't know what major to declare. I really have no sense what the best path forward is, but I get a lot of encouragement from my art. I really enjoy it. And his name was Abe. He was an illustrator. He did book covers and all kinds of things, but he did the Dune book cover at one point by Frank Herbert. Anyway, he was from Spanish Harlem, and he had a great, accent. And I just remember he, said, "You can draw. You should declare a major in illustration." So I did, and he became my mentor, really. And I'm so glad I declared that illustration major because it gave me a very practical initial path toward art and sort of working on some of those more maybe commerce applied skills, as well as taking the figure drawing classes and the painting classes and photography. And so it was a nice bridge. And it wasn't until really, actually, that I graduated. I just got a bachelor's in illustration and kind of pounded the pavement, started doing illustration and ad agency work, and realized quickly that I don't think this illustration thing is quite right. It's because the digital age this was the late 90s, and the digital age was bringing in kind of a new era into that marketplace. And even then, everything I needed to do was due the next morning. So it was like, okay. And I loved painting faces. Every illustration project in college turned into a face I could paint. So I began to do portraits. So calling, when did I feel I had a calling? I think that as soon as I invested in my artistic gifts and abilities and began to really practice them regularly, and that would have been honestly junior year of college, and I did need a 5th year because I was behind on the art on the track to do all the art classes to graduate. As soon as I did that, boy, I fell in love, and there was no looking back. And any passion I had felt in the past for baseball, it just like kind of got replaced and then some. And I just wanted to figure out this thing called making a living from art. And I'd made a commitment that I would try anything and everything to make an income from my art through the work of my hands. That was, like I said, advertising comps at ad agencies. I did storyboards. I did book illustrations. I did a little bit of editorial illustration. I did corporate illustration. I did murals, and I did portraits. And as soon as I got to portraits, I realized there's a place where I can serve a client and paint a more fine art application. And I really enjoyed it. So that became really the area that I grew as an artist. That was kind of phase 1 for me.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think, don't you think that stepping into that portrait world away from, the ad agency sort of work, it opens up your creativity so much. Don't you? Didn't you?
For me, I think the challenge and the tension I was having was twofold. Number one, the illustrative work at the time, because of the advent of the digital age, and the good work was taken, okay? And I was a young artist trying to, make my way. I went to the Art Students League on Saturdays for a while and just painted from the figure and the portrait. I did pastel in the morning and oil in the afternoon. And I just loved, painting people. The turnaround was so fast with the illustrative work that you couldn't sink your teeth into meaningful stuff. And typically at the time I was being pushed in a direction stylistically. And the portrait work, I could find my way. And I enjoyed painting realistic portraits that, had a likeness. And I could take my time with that. They could be developed so that I could feel a sense in the work having, real merit. Like I had created something that I would be proud of to then deliver to the client. I really enjoyed that. That was for me what was the big shift. And when I said, wow. And actually, interestingly enough, it was right around really the late 90s when some of these portrait societies emerged as a new way of learning. And I remember going to like the very first one in New York City and then the second one. And there was a community around it at the time, which for me was very exciting. So it was a new environment to grow. But those golden age, I will say this, those golden age illustrators were my inspiration early on, going to the Society of Illustrators in New York City. N.C. Wyeth and Pyle and Lion Decker and these artists that really were exceptional painters were my original inspiration for going in that direction. So I could find that initially through portraiture, and then it evolved into opening doors that opened in galleries and moving into gallery and commission work for the next phase, really, of that evolution.
So Alan, do you your pastel work is so wonderful, and I know your oil work is as well. What is pastel your passion?
It is. I still have my oil materials, and for a while I was really struggling with that. Let me get back to the oils, blah blah. But I just love the pastels so much, and excuse me, I got to this point where I just really accepted that pastel is my primary medium of expression as an artist, and that is good. There was an earlier version of myself that thought, well, and some of this thinking came from external sources, that you know, the medium and the masters is oil. You must paint in oil. And so I did. I practiced it. I worked in it. I delivered commissions in oil as well as in pastel. And then it got to the point where I just, what would you like? Would you like an oil or a pastel? And more people were gravitating to the pastel because I think the beauty of the color, the intimacy, the direct nature of it, and you know, it was my primary medium of expression. It just looked the most intrinsically, you know, most authentic expression of mine was my pastel work, and so I gave in, and it's wonderful. And I actually haven't painted anything but pastel for goodness, I think. For years and years. I'm trying to remember the last time I did an oil. It's over 5 years ago, if not more. So a while.
So, you know,
Yes.
I think a lot of people, or often people get when they go to a gallery, you know, and they show their work, and the gallery says, "Well, we don't want something under glass, you know, we don't want."
Yes.
Um,
And believe me, I heard that. I think if you're going to be an artist by vocation, there's a little something inside of you that doesn't take no for an answer, because you wouldn't be making a living as an artist if you did accept no's, because there's lots of them.
right.
So when I heard that no, that particular no, Bonnie, that, well, we really want oils, I tried to get underneath that and say, well, what is it? What is the client perspective? What is the collector perspective here? What is it about that they're having a struggle with? And number one, I think there was a works on paper impression of things. Like you know, you look at the piece and it looks like a work on paper versus a painting medium. And so presentation could impact that, as we know, right? You could frame something. So, and pastels can look exactly like oils in terms of the kind of finish quality. It's just that there's a glazing in front of them, right? That piece of glass or acrylic, whatever it may be. So then it's about, okay, well, how do you help educate the collector around the beauty, and what are the pros versus this particular con that they're feeling? And I never had trouble selling pastels. I tell you, I've sold so many pastels in galleries. I've sold oils as well. But so I think there's a presentation piece, then the gallery owner had to open up to it. So you get into some places that accept the work, and then just let the collector decide. Let them in, let them at it. And I found they would buy my pastels. And I had oils as well that I could offer them. But so I just think there is sometimes work to be done just in us positioning ourselves in a way that we look great alongside those oils, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, with museum glass and, you know, the glazing that
That's
you
it.
do, and how you frame it, you know, if you frame it matted, or if you don't frame it matted, and you know, frame it more like an oil painting, sometimes people will say, "Oh, I thought that was an oil," you know.
Absolutely. And they said that all the time with mine, and you hit the nail on the head there. You know, don't make the glass an issue. Make that go away. So museum glass, AR glass, if you can't afford it, is going to look darn good. But museum's going to be virtually invisible and have that UV filtering. So it's a real selling point, honestly. You can, and you know, when they call your painting an oil because they didn't see any glass and they're looking at it framed like an oil, and you say, funny thing, it's a soft pastel. Then they find out more about it. That, you know, people buy from their heart. Like, unless they're purchasing investment pieces, and that's not why they come to me, right? I'm not investment art. I'm not that category. Then they're buying things that move them, that they see and they respond to, and they want to hang on their wall and look at and get nourishment from creatively, right? Or in terms of the beauty that it offers. And when you put something on the wall and it touches someone, you know, they want to bring it home. That's what I've found.
Yep, they've got to be able to make their story out of it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's some of your favorite art books? If you had to pick 3 or 4 favorites?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I have my heroes. I'm a big Joaquin Sorolla fan. I love Sorolla's work. So I've got a couple of, there's a Sargent, there's a Sorolla, that's Edgar Payne, but this Sorolla Masterworks book is a beauty, really special to me. It's hard for me to really narrow down. I would say there's been seasons where certain books have been so significant to me, like Richard Schmidt's Alla Prima is a great example. That's up in that top 5 for me. The John Singer Sargent book that I purchased in my 20s after seeing a one-man exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston was very, very special to me because it represented a sea change in my life as an artist. I was 25. There was before I saw the Sargent show, and then there was the rest of my life after, like so many of us have seen. And I'm sure if I walked into a Sorolla exhibit, I would have had a very similar experience, because now at 50, Sorolla is my favorite artist. It's the light, it's the brushwork, it's the figurative, it's everything coalescing. But that was a powerful moment in my life. I realized that I wanted to go after, real figurative artwork after seeing that show, and to see it at scale, just the scale and ambition of Sargent's work and the breadth of it. Beautiful watercolors, incredible charcoal studies, oil paintings, big and small. Amazing.
Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful artist for sure.
Yeah, so those were kind of like pillars and milestones on my journey as an artist, that really I started off as a portrait and figurative artist, and then my kind of view expanded and evolved over the years. I initially wasn't painting landscapes and didn't think still life was all that exciting. Now I was like, give it to me, give it all to me. I love the still life, I love landscape, I love floral, I love it, I really do. And it's like I need it. I get bored if I'm doing one subject for too long. I really enjoy the diversity of expression.
That's great. So I know that you've got some images that you want to show us. I do want to talk a little bit about, some of your techniques and favorite products and things like that. But I'm thinking, work that into some of the images that you're going to show us, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, as I share some images, have at me. Like if you want to ask anything materials based, I'm happy to respond.
Okay.
What I thought I would do, Bonnie, and we can kind of have fun with this in any way that you think is appropriate, but I wanted to talk about how, I think as artists, we need to keep growing. We need to keep learning, and we need to keep evolving. It's just very important. It's very necessary. But the challenge is that oftentimes with any measure of success, it's like you get cast as Christopher Reeves, and now Christopher Reeve gets cast as Superman. Now he's Superman for the rest of his life, right? You do that great children's portrait when you're 20-something, and then that's what you are. You're the guy who paints children's portraits for the rest of your life. But what if I want to expand, right? So for me, I started off really with a realist approach, really loved it, but then you evolve. And for me now, it's a lot more about mark making. And I wanted to look at some of how that's evolved, not too expansively. And we could talk about, some of what excites me, a couple of then and nows. But yeah, I love talking about how my interest and passion and curiosity and expression is really around color and mark making now. Not around make the thing look like the thing, whether that's a face or a flower or a beautiful landscape scene. So that's what we can do. And sometimes materials are wonderful. Well, all the time, they're wonderful facilitators of that process. Sometimes you get a certain paper that launches you into a new mode of expression or a new brand of pastel that excites you, right?
Yes, because we cannot have too many pastels, right?
Never. That's right. So you want me to dive in?
Yep.
Okay, well, I can't start one of these things without getting right in to what I consider one of the more pivotal moments in my development or evolution as an artist, which was I went to Rwanda. I think originally it was probably late 2005, definitely 2006. That's me with a shaved head in Rwanda with some boys. And the work I did in response to that changed. And there's a profound connection to the subject, finding beauty on the other side of brokenness. That whole story set me on a journey. I then went to Cambodia a few years later and continued that Reflections of Hope series. But this painting here that we're looking at is of a sweet little girl named Evelyn. And I painted her earlier, and then I painted her again. And in this case, you're seeing mark making that is, well, getting looser, getting bolder. You still see a lot of refinement in the face, that charming, beautiful skin, lots of layering there, some hard pastel use on the surface of the skin. But now we're bringing in these bold, choppy marks in the background, some more very visible, layered, choppy marks in the clothing, certainly in the banana leaf crown that's sitting atop her head. And it was like this interesting dialogue between representation and just pure, joyful mark making and expressive color began to emerge, alongside of just my own personal mission to kind of reveal beauty in the midst of what is often a dark or broken story. Very clearly in Rwanda, post-genocide, that's an easy one, but often in our lives, there's challenges, there's difficulties, and those things can become the story, but we as artists get to bring beauty into that story. And it's really, I want to encourage all of us as artists, our art matters so very much, and we are agents of restoration in our communities because we bring beauty into the narrative, into the story, and you can't have an encounter with beauty without experiencing hope. It's a very powerful thing. So I just wanted to say that. So this is a really important moment for me, and post kind of 2006, that journey I went on. But just a couple years ago, this is a drawing, and you're going to see a phrase on the paper. I was studying a Sorolla painting. It says, as I study this masterwork, I want to learn from Sorolla how to capture the impression of sun-drenched light on figures by the sea. So that was my intention. This is what I want to learn when I do this master study. Sorolla is one of those masters of light and color, but also just the powerful sort of gesture of figures, action, play, mark-making, bravura brushwork, just really bold strokes. And so I did a painting in response, a masterwork, and this is it. And again, I think as you look at this as compared to some of my early work, there's a lot of bold marks and strokes, and I'm learning from Sorolla how to communicate via, lyrical, active mark making, and also through color, right? Shifts in temperature, the warm red on the hand, the cool blues and greens inside the shadow of the forearm, the cool mauves and violets on the chest, the warms in the lights on the shoulder and the arms, those wonderful temperature changes that he's such an amazing teacher in bringing. Now, this piece is actually done on pastel mat, and I used to work on pretty much Le Carte, or then it became Wallace, right? And then Wallace went away, and then UArt, and just UArt was my main paper. But I've really enjoyed the way that pastel mat receives mark making and allows a kind of beautiful, playful, sketchy, but also painterly application. So this for me, again, is me exploring both this realism, yes, but also a lot of expression in color and in the play of light and in mark making. And letting it break apart and letting it express itself more loosely often is for me really quite delightful, really exciting. I want to show you a couple of older figurative pieces, and these are pieces that were very well received. So for instance, that profile of this beautiful little child. This was my neighbor, Kaylee. She went out to college for dance, and she's, I think, finishing up college. But when she was just a little one, we had a photo shoot in her dance studio her mother owned, and just that light. It was one of those early moments where everything came together, that profile. And I did a whole collection for a gallery show of her as a ballerina. And it's a little softer if you look at the finish quality of everything. There are some marks. You see a little turquoise mark here, but the skin is pearlescent and soft. This is probably all on Lacarte, Sennelier Lacarte. And lots of blending. You see the figure, the skin is softened. There's an interest in light, definitely. I loved seeing that light. This was every one of these paintings I ever did sold because they're just so adorable. And I think that it's an easy, like the market understands this subject matter. And it's really beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I show you these older ones because I recently, and maybe some of you saw it, but I recently did this painting for Pastel Live, I believe. Actually, it was a demonstration painting. And I really like it. And it's interesting to go from where we just were to this one because it looks so broken and textured and coarse. The light is even more punchy. Some aspects of it are less finished. Others, you understand them. And I remember finishing this piece and going, well, do I want to go further? Do I want to refine it? And my decision was I really loved the quality in which those almost like mosaic tile marks that you see, the way that they, represent is really, I really enjoy that. That speaks to me. That makes my heart leap when I get to make those marks and then leave them. So what you're looking at too is a thumbnail sketch on the left, a small sort of thumbnail sketch, understanding the subject. And that was the charcoal soft fine charcoal on pastel mat in the dark gray anthracite. And just sketching it all in and then just directly applying this beautiful soft pigment in a very sort of broken mark making approach. So I just really enjoy, if you look at this, it's really beautiful. And then this piece actually hangs in my living room now. It's part of the private collection. I just love this painting.
That's really beautiful. I just think that, going to the more bold mark making that you've done in this one is like it's like the next step, isn't it?
I think you gotta find something to continue to motivate you to show up at the easel, right? And at a point, I can draw the thing to look like the thing is no longer rewarding. And you're looking for more. You're looking for, what is the story? What do I want to say? How do I want to make people feel? And yeah, the surface effect, the character of the light and shadow, the color, and how it communicates emotion, right? Color communicates mood and emotion so powerful. Light really does communicate mood, but color is a poetic vehicle to communicate emotion. It touches the heart. So yeah, that for me is really powerful. And you'll see it here. Like here's one, right, where there's a thumbnail on the left. This is peonies. I went out to a peony garden and all in bloom, just a beautiful day before a big thunderstorm. Thankfully, I got some good photographs because that thunderstorm came that day. But this piece is another painting where I did it and was amazed by how it made me feel when I painted this. You can see that there's bold, loose mark making and expressive. There's some very unfinished elements. And then there's some expressive, like the pink that moves through this piece didn't exist in the reference, right? Like it wasn't there, right? This little passage of pink. That is embellishment. That's the pixie dust of how I want you to feel when you experience this. And that kind of experience is all about the mark making and letting that loose and playing with some chroma, playing with some accents that soft pastel is uniquely wonderful at bringing, right? Again, this one on pastel matte anthracite. Now, I still love UArt and use it a lot, but it just so happens that this one as well. But I love making these thumbnails. I do them a lot with markers and Posca paint pens and just little thumbnails that kind of work out so that I'm very bold and direct when I get to the painting. I'm not trying to figure things out from a value standpoint. I really am then in another discourse with mark making with color.
And Alan, what surface are you doing the thumbnails on? Are those also on?
You know, I do those on, so most often I'm on Strathmore 400 toned tan, and I like the little 5.5 by 8 sort of sketchbook size. I actually probably have 3 or 4 different sized sketch pads because sometimes I like to sketch at 9 by 12 sometimes, but those thumbnails I'm constantly doing at that kind of small, you know, 5 by 7-ish type size. And that's what you're seeing here. And they're done with markers because I find that the markers forces a kind of clarity and value boldness for me that I really enjoy. I just like the tone tan. I like the way it looks, that little bit of warmth. And
don't they make that in a gray and the tan?
they do, yes. And I have both. I just really love the tan for whatever reason. And the gray is wonderful as well. Let me come over here. I wanted to show you too, like, so this piece was really special to me. Actually, I went out to Sebastopol, California, just before the pandemic hit. I was teaching a workshop there. It was one of those workshops where I was doing portraits one day, still life the next day, landscape the next day, and we were just having a grand old time. And at lunch, I went to this adorable farm-to-table little lunch spot. And this woman just put love into everything she did, who owned this farm-to-table. It was a, what do you call it? When it's fresh food, but you walked up, there wasn't a restaurant. You pretty much came up to it and then you sat in shared tables. But she put these fresh flowers on every table out in the patio area that was shared by multiple vendors. And she just brought beauty into everything she did. And I remember taking pictures of the little farm stand arrangement in a ball jar of flowers. And then the pandemic hit and I went home to Connecticut via Denver, and people were wearing masks and I didn't know what was happening. And all of a sudden we found ourselves in lockdown. And this painting I did in 2020 during a 30-day painting challenge because we're all locked in our homes, right? And this was on UArt Dark. And this is as bold as something came out of me. It was the fact that the flowers were so colorful allowed me to be very expressive. And the dark surface allowed me to be very, very direct. And I just love the visual appeal of it. And it's so broken and so textured and lively. I just really enjoy the way that it impacts me almost viscerally. When I see the color, I see the marks, I experience the moment, sort of broken edges, that whole dialogue. And this is the game a lot of times. I really enjoy this experience in a painting. So I didn't want you to miss out on that as I talk about sort of that evolution toward mark making. And I love still life with color like nowadays. I used to do these Dutch dark still lifes, nothing wrong with that, but I'm in my glorying in color phase of my life for sure.
That's beautiful. And you know, it seems like when you use those dark surfaces.
Yes.
Color just pops, you know.
It does, you're right. The color just is so powerful when you work on those dark surfaces, Bonnie. It's so true. So I'll go to those dark surfaces sometimes just knowing that if I want to really pull the light out of the dark and really let the color communicate and let broken, fragmented mark making speak to the viewer, I'll use a dark surface like this.
Yeah,
I just recently did this. We were inside of the community that I lead. We were learning about different things, and you can see there's the tone gray. See, tone gray, there's a little thumbnail on the top left, and this is on UArt with an underpainting wash that you can kind of pick up on, right? You can see the wash moving through there underneath. But again, realistic in the sense that we know it's a horse, we know it's a jockey, but also, bringing this language of mark making, of broken, you see the green marks to convey energy and liveliness and sort of edge work, letting some things contour and other edges, fade away. That's very interesting, and I really enjoy that dialogue in a painting. So this is me kind of having fun, communicating energy and motion and mood and power, and still, letting those marks push through, show through.
So Alan, when you're doing an underpainting on, well, I guess any surface, what's your thought process as far as what color you do your underpainting?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, there's so many good options with underpaintings because you can activate your scene in a number of different ways to accomplish your intention. In this case, I wanted to create some of that fluid sort of horizontal energy in the piece. So I washed with like green ochres and yellow ochres. I think I even used that sort of cool blue-green turquoise up top, and kept all the washing with a very horizontal energy so that there would be the feeling already of when this horse is running, just that whoosh, that sort of, the scene is flying by behind the horse. And even the guardrail, I actually pushed that guardrail further into, the background and just kind of into the atmosphere so that it fell behind and became less dominant. And then letting the horse and jockey and the power and movement of the stride really be the story. So the underpainting wash really established that. It established some nice earthy greens at the bottom end and then blues at the top. And then I worked that warm, rusty red brown on top of it, and it just kind of came to life nicely. So it's really, it depends. Again, sometimes you want to activate the scene with a strong complementary color and let that crackle through the whole painting. Other times you're just trying to set up a soft tone that you can layer your chroma on top of. That's the case here. The tones underneath are a little softer.
Well, that worked.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So somebody's,
How big is that painting?
how,
Oh, what's that?
How big is the painting?
how big these paintings are.
Oh, this one's 12 by 18, is it? Or 16? Probably, I think it's 12 by 16. Some of these are smaller, like this is 10 by 10, I think, in that range. And the peonies is like 9 by 12. It's not too big. But yeah, this is 12 by 16. This is 12 by 18, this gentleman. I literally just finished this. This is kind of something I just did. And there's I wouldn't describe that drawing on the left as a thumbnail because it's more refined. It's more of a drawing that's done with pencil, markers, and a Posca white paint pen. But it is on the 5.5 by 8-ish size paper. And I just love this character. And so I think the rugged, so this is me full circle doing a portrait, right? But glorying in texture and painting it for me, not for a client, and letting the story be the powerful vehicle. This is on pastel matte brown. This is 18 by 12 in terms of scale. So it's about a life-size head. And not blending the mark making in the face, right? Like I actually have a close-up for you because I want you to really get in there and see the mark making in the face. Just get in, like pastel is so powerful in communicating through direct layered application of marks. And when we blend it, we lose the impact that color has. Now, I was told that early on, but I didn't understand it like experientially yet. I needed to, I wasn't ready for it yet. But now, like, Man, I'm sold. The way that this color, like when you put pink and then a very neutral pale taupe and a more chromatic peachy orange and a little bit of mauve, and you layer them over each other, something else happens. And you know, that's the beauty of just letting those pigments communicate to the viewer. And the way light bounces off the unblended marks is more exciting than the way it bounces off of a blended mark. So some, you know, I am pro blending. Like I have times where I blend, but this is not one of those times. I wanted to let those marks fly because this old craggy fisherman needed to be, he just needed to be as
That's
weathered
fab.
as could be, you know, and lots of fun with that and the beard and everything. So I just, that is, I just painted this and had a lot of fun painting it. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to show you what I've just recently created? And again, I'm using blue and turquoise as a foil against the warmer skin tones, right? So that you get color contrast, color temperature contrast. So the warm flesh comes forward against that beautiful, cool blue and turquoise. And then very simple, right? Like the collar gives us a lot, the hat gives us a lot, and then just letting it go, letting the shoulders go, letting the clothing go, just give us a little something that we can travel on and then keep our attention. We take a nice, like when you slide into the pool, I mean that this, visually that pipe just kind of brings you up into the face, you know, in a really fun way, as does the beard. Lots of fun curvy linear lines in the contours. But yeah,
Such a great.
that's the story. This is the last painting I wanted to share, Bonnie. And the only other thing I had on the slides here was that I do teach Portrait Week, March 17th through the 21st. It's coming up in just a little over a month, and I just wanted to let everybody know that it's coming. It's 5 days of live online excitement, and registration is going to open at the end of February, and it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be a no-brainer to sign up. It costs $10 to join Portrait Week, and that's, you know, just a.
And that's an hour long each day.
Each day is an hour-long lesson. Yep. So it'll be 5 consecutive days of hour-long lessons. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you've ever wondered about that, this whole idea of creating a portrait, this is your chance. This is the time to come and join me. And you can head over to my website at picardstudio.com, and there's a Learn with Alan tab, and there's even a wait list there for the portrait opportunity. So you can go there, but this is coming right up. I don't think you'll miss it if you know it's coming, and I'd love for you to join me. It's going to be fun.
Well, you know,
That's all I really wanted to show you guys in terms of this exciting exploration of moving from soft realism toward a more broken and colorful expression of mark making. Actually, I have a little mini course on my website. I forgot about this. There's a little mini course called Expressive Mark Making, just using pairs. So if anybody ever wants to just have a little quick, fun experience with opening up their mark making, that's a great opportunity.
Is that a recorded class that any of you can just do?
It's like it's one of those there all the time.
Well, I did your Portrait Week last year, and it was very fun. I wouldn't dare show you any of the work that I did. Oh my gosh!
All right.
But
I'm glad you joined. I'm sad you wouldn't dare show me.
Hey, Alan, somebody was asking if it's possible, I don't know if it's handy, but if you could show us an example of your framing and glazing approach.
Sure. Can you just give me a second? I'm going to walk over and grab a painting.
Sure.
I probably could grab a couple. Yeah,
so anybody that's on listening, that Portrait Week is really, I think it was really valuable.
This piece was in the PSA exhibit this year, and it has a piece of museum glass on it and a little bit more contemporary frame. And this is actually a linen liner. So the museum glass is right up against the pastel, and then the liner serves as a nice way to break that apart and just create a little more depth. But it's a nice kind of chunky frame. That's one approach. I have another approach that I really like in the painting frame look. And I can grab one because I just recently, give me 1 second. I just recently framed another piece.
That linen liner is nice. It looks kind of transitional. You know, it would go in.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know what's nice about the linen liner? It sometimes you need a little kind of breathing moment, but it also creates dimension. You know, it creates a spatial sense of dimension.
Did you
which
say
at
that?
times is nice.
Did you say the pastel is against the glass?
It is, yeah. It's passé partout. Is that how you say it? Oop, I'm trying to figure out which way to face this. This is it should be this way. I did this adorable Cambodian boy, and this is a really clean, simple black and gold, and it just looks really handsome. And you can see it's got a little warmth. It's framed like an oil. It's got the, you know, I think actually in this case it's AR glass.
Yeah, that's great.
But it still looks really beautiful, and it looks like, you know, it's in that painting frame style, just really pretty. This is actually a molding that Abend, A-B-E-N-D, Abend Custom Frames in Colorado does. So really pretty.
Alan, let's talk a little bit about. I'm glad to hear that you're framing up against the glass.
Yeah. So this piece actually was framed a few years back, and there's a black frame spacers in there. So this is not up against the glass. It says the museum glass and a nice frame. This was my traditional way, was to put the frame spacers in. And at some point, I think a gallery I was in Charleston, there was a local framer. I shipped some art down there, and the local framer framed stuff up. I shipped some frames, and they just put it all together. And I came to the opening, and they sandwiched them, and I freaked out. And then over the years, I realized it was wonderful, and it worked really great. I'm a big fan now because it removes condensation. It removes the opportunity for the dust to fall, because it's, you know, you have to seal it. You have to literally seal the glass to the art. I use framer's tape. It's like a very plastic, and I seal them together and then put it in that way so that they become one little happy team, the glass and the art. Because you don't want any shifting, obviously, right? If it would shift, you'd have problems. But there's times where a matte is really beautiful, typically with smaller works, and where I'll use a clean, kind of modern looking thin frame with a matte, and it looks really beautiful. But largely the painting frame is a great way to go to sort of say, hey, this is a finished painting.
And you haven't had any issues whether it's a humid climate or a dry climate, or, I mean, in the West, we don't have issues with humidity. So, and that's
Yeah, so I'll just say, like, over the years, the issues I have had have been with space between, and because with space you have air, with air you have the opportunity for condensation. I have never had any condensation occur with Passepartout, because I think there's no air between the work and the glass, so there's nothing to create condensation. That was a big fear of mine, and it's, you know, it's turning out so far to have been unfounded, yeah. And there's a lot of pros to it in terms of the security and stability of it, yeah.
it's great for people that do a lot of plein air work where you're, really framing on the fly, so to speak,
Yeah,
and it's.
absolutely, sure. You could have, you know, have the frames ready and pop them right in, and put the glazing Yeah, you could have your frames with a piece of glass already in or a piece of acrylic already in with a backing board and just pop it out, put it in, and seal it all up together. It is important though, if you're going to put the glass against the art, that you seal them together so that there's no movement at all. It has to be secure.
That's true. Wow, those were some gorgeous, gorgeous pieces, Alan. And there's a lot of comments here. I just want to read you those so you
Oh, thanks.
get to know what some of these people were saying. Wow, so dynamic. Norma says such beautiful marks and color. Susan said, well, she asked how large the paintings were.
Mm-hmm.
Jean said, the fisherman's character that comes through with your mark making. Loves that. Sally said, the color of the beard. Wow. Barbara just said, beautiful paintings, Alan. Do you use black or dark charcoal for your darks?
When I'm in a painting, in the painting stage, so I will often sketch with charcoal. I'm usually sketching with hard pastels on like UArt, and then with like charcoal on pastel mat, it works well. But when you get into the application of soft pastel, the darks are effectively created via either soft pastel or a nice hard, like a black new pastel is a great rich dark black. But there are some like I've always been a big fan of the intense darks that Terry Ludwig makes. Now Blue Earth has a beautiful dark set that's really lovely if you haven't tried it. There's just a lot of gorgeous darks on the market where you can get some color in those darks, right? So that tends to be what I do. But if I'm looking for like the nooks and crannies, I'll use my hard pastels. Cordovan or black in New Pastel in particular are a couple of the darks that I go to a lot.
Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, love the variety of strokes. Just lovely, very exciting.
Oh, and I will say, I'm realizing I need to tell the truth here. I also use Girault. Girault has some beautiful darks, dark browns, dark reds, dark blues. Girault has some gorgeous colors, and definitely there's some Girault in that fisherman painting somewhere.
Somebody is asking, what time is the portrait work each day? Portrait week each day.
Oh, yeah. So we actually record everything, and all the replays are available during that whole portrait week. So if it's not in your times or anything, but we run the lives at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which would be in your time, 3 hours earlier, right? So that would be noon Pacific. But obviously, it's very much a global event. So we record everything, and we have replays available throughout the whole week to make sure everyone can take advantage of the lessons and do the exercises, post them in the community, get feedback from the community. It's lots of fun.
And it's let's see. Oh, Barbara says you do such a great job with your classes and all of your classes.
Thank you, Barbara. Says the teacher.
And let's see. Oh, and the fabulous content. Many thanks. So a lot of great thanks out there. That was really lovely work, and we certainly appreciate the time that you have given us this evening. And
oh, it's my pleasure. My hope is, that you come away hearing that art is really a journey and it's a great adventure, and the development of our artistic voice is not static. It's a constant evolution, and to continue to embrace that and to continue to lean into that and enjoy that process of discovery as an artist. It's really wonderful. Stay curious and allow that change to come your way through a willingness to experiment and play, honestly, right? Like when I was doing the portrait of the kids, they were for the client, and they had to look just like Bobby or Susan or Ricky or whatever. And they were usually, the client's wishes were imprinting on that process somehow. Maybe it was a bigger smile than I would have picked or something. But So it's hard to grow in that context. You can get more skillful, but it's hard to, you know, you're not finding your own voice in that process. So you've got to find expression in your own sandbox where you're playing, right? And for me, that's going out doing plein air painting when I was burnt out on a bunch of portraits in a row. It was, you know, getting together with some peers and going to the portrait, you know, doing a life sketch class on Thursday nights at my buddy Bill's place, and we're all painting from the model, or certainly going on these cultural explorations, Rwanda, Cambodia, and being so moved by the experiences I had, and then beginning to excavate those experiences through paintings. Exploring different subject matter, we can really be surprised by that if we'll allow ourselves. Sometimes the thing you don't think could be interesting, I change subjects constantly in the community that I lead, inside of the membership that I lead, because we think we just do this thing, but if you'll open up to other subjects and things that you never thought you would like or want to paint, you'll find incredible surprises, and they'll teach you new things that you can carry into your favorite subjects, and you'll have new favorite subjects. It's very exciting. So
Yeah,
keep growing. That's the, keep
Stop
that learner mindset.
Never stop learning.
No, yeah.
Let's see here if there's any more questions. Oh, somebody just said, love seeing the options and the encouragement. So I wanted to ask you, Alan, when you did your trip to Cambodia and to Rwanda, what did you take with you as far as your art supplies? You know, because you're obviously you're
Oh yeah,
traveling.
that's a good question. So when I originally went to Rwanda, you know, I was a young guy, young artist, and I was a part of my church community, and you know, we were involved with World Relief, and there was going to be this strategic partnership with World Relief in the Great Lakes region of Africa, and you know, we were going to make a real difference by giving a certain amount of money as a church community to see some wonderful things happen with child development, anti-malarial, some great stuff in education and, you know, care for, you know, child survival, some really good programs. And I remember opening my mouth and saying something like, well, you're not gonna, who's gonna go with your team and actually share that story visually? Because you're gonna send a bunch of people who talk, but you need to be able to bring that story back to the community and show them what you're talking about, you know, through pictures, through images. And you should send somebody like that. I remember saying that. And then they said, about a week later, they said, great, will you go? And I said, no, I'm an artist. I'm not that, right? So I ended up buying some camera equipment. I knew that it was going to be really hard to do any kind of real painting because you're moving while you're there. You're seeing a lot of things. You're seeing things happen here and there. And so I just bought a bunch of camera equipment, just became a sponge, watched everything. I did some sketching, but I really didn't paint. The context wasn't right for it. It was a relief and development trip, honestly. And then I came home with all these images and experiences, and I went and met people everywhere and experienced all kinds of things, and then I painted back at home. So when I did Cambodia, I knew what I was getting into more, and I brought more video-based equipment as well as photography, because the story is even more powerful if it's on film, right? And again, lots and lots of photographs, and really did the painting back here at home. Those circumstances, because they were in the context of relief and development work, it wasn't a painting retreat. It wasn't a painting trip. I was a member of a team of people who were doing relief and development work, basically. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But
So for me, it was like, how do I take everything I'm experiencing and like a sponge absorb it all and capture it all? And that just meant get up before dawn and go get the sunrise over the rice paddy, you know, go see the water buffalo at sunrise before they go for their nap in the middle of the day. You know, go everywhere you can that nobody else wants to go to with the eyes of an artist and capture everything. And that's what I did, yeah. And you know,
If you were,
wasn't convenient. I made a lot of people's lives inconvenient on those trips, but I got some incredible imagery that I was able to bring home, and it makes a difference. I think as artists, we see the world uniquely, and we have an opportunity to share a different point of view that can move hearts and touch people's lives in all kinds of different ways, depending on who we are and what we're interested in, right? It could be conservation. It could be animals. It could be anything, right?
so if you were going to do a trip just to do some painting,
Yeah.
you know, maybe a
Well, I
maybe
went to South France and did that. You know, I went to, you know, a couple of years back, I had an amazing painting retreat in the south of France, and we were plein air painting all over the place. Sunflowers, you know, water gardens, bridges and limestone mills and all kinds of beautiful things. And yeah, that was the place to just, you know, paint and then have wonderful times. I had another trip like that in Croatia, and I will in the future do more of that. I really love it.
and what do you
Right.
what do you recommend to people to take on something like that? I mean, what supplies? Just the basics.
Oh, you know, I think, you know, the best thing you can do is to really travel light when it comes to, like, if you're going to try to paint outside. So the reality is like the more stuff you bring, the harder it is to bring all that outside, right? So you need a really light setup. So I loved like the really small boxes that like Dakota and Heilman have that are really small. Bring a very limited palette outside, you know. Better to sketch than not sketch, right? So
Right.
bring sketching materials. You can have a palette that you can work right in your lap sitting on a wall, right? I do have a tripod and a backpack Heilman box and a Heilman easel, and I can set up and paint on location that way. Even that is stuff like, so I would say, you know, if you're not comfortable with that, Blue Earth is making these little sets like the Nomad set. It's 56 colors. You could bring that in a backpack and have a little, like a little small pad of pastel paper and just paint in your lap, you know, whatever is going to facilitate you doing it, I think is so important versus feeling so weighed down by too many materials. I have to have all the colors. We don't have to have all the colors. We never will, you know. Once you understand some value, you can create an impression of a scene with precious few colors.
That's true. Well, Alan, it's 7:06 is what my phone says,
Are you
and
saying it's rapidly approaching my bedtime, Bonnie?
I'm thinking, well, maybe mine.
It's 9:05 here. We're
Okay.
good. I'm just teasing. Well, this has
Yeah.
been fun. Thanks for
So
joining. Thanks to everybody who joined and allowed this opportunity to talk about growth and being a lifelong learner, and that a fixed mindset gets us nowhere and a learner's mindset will get us everywhere. So,
Well, I thank you so much for your time, Alan, and sharing your gorgeous paintings with us and your philosophy and your story. And I'm pretty glad that the major leagues didn't pick you up, because I think
hey, we're lucky I didn't throw any harder. I just couldn't throw hard enough, and it's a blessing because I never hurt my rotator cuff. My left arm that I now hold those very heavy pastels with is
Right.
healthy.
That's
It's healthy.
right.
Yes.
Hey, well,
We would have been
listen,
in trouble if I had, you know, Tommy John surgery or one of those, you know, because
yeah,
all my peers who were really good, they all had shoulder surgery, all of them,
yeah,
you know. So
that's right. Well, listen, thank you so much, and take good care, and so much success to you. And thanks
appreciate it,
everybody
Bonnie.
for joining us. And our next We Talk Art is in March, and I'm going to be visiting with Jeff Ludwig. So that'll be kind of fun.
Oh boy, you know,
Jeff?
Jeff made me a beautiful portrait set. I have my own portrait set and my own landscape set that Jeff made for me. That I picked the colors, of course, but I love them. They're so beautiful.
They're wonderful. They're
Yeah,
wonderful.
he's a pretty good guy, that Jeff.
So
Now's the
thank
time
you.
to show your faces if you want to wave goodbye, everybody.
Yep, some seeing faces out
Give
there.
you the wave. Keep painting, everybody.
Thanks for
There
joining.
they are.
There they are.
Yes. All right.
All
You're
the
actually
fans.
there. Wonderful. Okay, friends.
Okay, everybody take good care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.